So let's take a look at that bill. It had $60 billion for Ukraine, $14 billion for Israel, $10 billion for humanitarian aid, including in Gaza and the West Bank, nearly $5 billion to combat China, almost $2.5 billion to deal with the Houthis in the Red Sea, another mess that's happened under her watch as vice president, and only about 17% of that spending in that bill, just over $20 billion, would have gone to addressing the open, wide open, and broken border because of her and Biden.
But yes, Madam Vice President, tell us more about how the exit from Afghanistan, which cost the lives of 13 Americans, is fine because taxpayers don't have to fund that war. Instead, we're just funding other wars around the world that we're not actually fighting in. All right, let's bring in House Oversight and Armed Services Committee member, Texas Congressman Pat Fallon. Pat, Congressman, good to see you. I want to just get your reaction to how Kamala Harris answered that question. Again, not taking any responsibility for the failure of the exit, not just the 13 service members who died, but also the fact that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden left $80 billion worth of American equipment behind for some pretty radical people.
Well, Sean, thanks for having me on. And listen, since its inception in January 21, this administration has been known as the Biden-Harris administration. Now she wants us to forget about the hyphen and the Harris. She can't have it both ways. It was her administration, and it was an absolutely disastrous withdrawal. Like you said, tens of billions of dollars worth of equipment, 13 American lives lost, and it was a conditions-based withdrawal. If the Taliban didn't meet certain conditions, then we weren't going to withdraw. And they said, we're going to withdraw at all costs. And by the way, you don't withdraw your military first, you withdraw them last. Their military advisors said that we needed 2,000 troops to secure the Bagram Air Base and the American Embassy. They went with 600 because that's what the State Department wanted. That was wrongly decided, and it ended up costing lives.
This afternoon, Senator J.D. Vance warned of the terror threat, Congressman, that America faces. Listen to this.
Go back to 9/11. That cost $500,000 for al-Qaeda and the Taliban to plan and execute that operation. We have given the Taliban, just since the fall of the Afghan government, hundreds of millions of dollars in direct American taxpayer aid. If they can do 9/11 with $500,000, what can they do with hundreds of millions of dollars of American taxpayer money? Kamala Harris has done nothing to stop that flow of money to the Taliban. At the same time, she's opened the border, allowing God knows how many of those fighters, military-age males, to come into our border completely unchecked and uncontrolled. So I really do believe, as tragic as today is, that we are as a greater risk of a terror attack in this country as we've been since 9/11.
And she seems perfectly okay with all of this.
Dagan, we don't even know who these people are. There's over 11 million people that have come across the border and into our country in the last 3.5 years. And I just attended a hearing earlier this morning where they wouldn't make it public because they wouldn't testify. The administration said you can go in front of Congress, but you have to have a closed hearing, which is absolutely ridiculous. And you know why? Because this administration is paying for 400,000 Afghanis to come to this country at the cost of $25 billion over the next 10 years. And they don't, and we can't pay our bills now, and they want to do that. And that's why they had the closed hearing. And that's about, if you do the math, somewhere around $60,000 per person in Afghanistan to get over here. And again, they say they have a robust screening process. A lot of these people, we don't know who they are because it's a very corrupt country over there. And we are directly paying the Taliban. This administration is paying the Taliban to keep that program alive.
The screeners with no real training, right? They don't have expertise in the vetting. But let's move to this, because on Capitol Hill today, Speaker Johnson pulled his spending plan, which would have included the SAVE Act, a bill that is going to prevent non-citizens from voting in elections. But according to AOC, that's not happening. Watch.
It's a story. It's not true. It's not fact. When we actually look at the numbers, we know that that this so-called idea of voter fraud is not real when you actually pull this up. And if anything, in instances where we do see voter fraud, many of them happen to be Republican voters that are voting for family members that may have passed away or things like that. And so, frankly, it's just completely false. And the idea of trying to really keep certain just narratives that are totally false about immigrants alive in order to incite hatred, in order to incite bad feelings towards our immigrant community right before an election period is a horrific and condemnable thing to do.
And despite documents proving Harris did indeed support giving transgender medical care to migrants, even those in, quote, immigration detention, according to the ACLU's questionnaire from 2019, she says that also is fake news.
When he started talking about transgender operations in migrant prisons, I mean, this is all just blatantly false and frankly racist tropes that have no basis in reality or evidence that are being weaponized to divide this country before an election.
Pat, I want to get your take on this because it seems just pretty clear. We want Americans who are American citizens to register to vote and to vote. And I've heard from actual individual people who have they're here unlawfully and they've gotten the documents to register to vote. And again, this is a real thing. And Democrats want to turn a blind eye so we don't see that you have these registrations of people who came across the border illegally.
Sean, I think the New York bartender has been a drinking because look, when you fill out the federal card to register to vote, all you have to do is check a box promising that you're an American citizen. It's on the honor system. And as long as that person checks the box and gets their voter ID card and goes and votes, there's no way that you can catch them. That's why we want to, in the SAVE Act, want to say, wait a minute, when you register to vote, simply prove that you're an American citizen. And then we want, as you said, we want Americans to participate. We are wanting to make it more difficult, not to vote, but to cheat. We want to make it easy to vote, harder to cheat.
But also, she talked about it's horrific and condemnable in reference to vilification of illegal immigrants. You know what's horrific and condemnable? People who should not have been in the United States murdering Americans who are here legally. These are crimes that should never have happened, but they're okay with it. And they want to lecture us about what's horrific and condemnable. Speaking of which, and this is related to what you were just talking about, since the border czar is so bothered about the failed border bill, let's do a dive a little deeper into what's going on with out-of-control immigration in this country. 2 weeks ago, the Biden-Harris administration restarted the controversial flight program despite accusations of fraud. This program allows migrants from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela to fly right into the United States. It was busted because sponsors were using, well, the Social Security numbers of, say, dead people. And you want to talk about, these are all nations that essentially hate the United States. Biden-Harris say these individuals are being vetted. Horse manure, they're being vetted. This is the makings of another 9/11, Congressman.
Dagan, you're absolutely right. What is reprehensible is the fact that just in Texas alone since 2011, we've had 299,000 criminal aliens charged with over 513,000 crimes, resulting in 187,000 convictions. And she's saying that they would murder, rape, kidnap, assault, but they wouldn't vote illegally? That's absurd. That's nuts. And yeah, there were 100 addresses that the Federation of American Immigration Reform found, 100 addresses where 19,000 people used for their sponsors. So clearly that's some kind of trafficking issue. There's tremendous fraud. And we need to control our borders and protect the American people.
Yeah, wouldn't that be nice? Again, that's the basics that our government should do and do right. I also want to talk to you about this before I let you go. You're on the task force investigating the assassination attempt on Donald Trump. Sources have told Fox that tomorrow the head of the Secret Service will deliver a classified briefing to the task force. Is that true, number one? And number two, what do you expect to learn about what happened to Donald Trump and the failures at Secret Service?
Yes, that is true, and I will be in that hearing. It's going to be in a SCIF, so it's a classified setting so they can answer any and all questions that we have. But you know what, Sean? We still haven't even seen the rifle. The FBI hasn't given us access to the rifle. We're on the task force. The task force was set up a month ago. I was in Butler with Chairman Kelly last week, and you would be shocked at the proximity of that AGR building to where President Trump spoke. But furthermore, there was a chain link fence that was even 50 yards closer to where the president was speaking. And if you were on the other side of that fence, and there were hundreds of people that were, they weren't checked at all for any kind of security. They didn't go through any magnetometers. I cannot believe the president is still alive. It is a small miracle, and the Secret Service failed miserably, historically, and epically, and we need to find out why.
If not for the Republicans, Congressman, would this just be buried and just go away?
You know what, Dakin's a great question. There's no doubt in my mind that they would say, well, he survived, so it's no big deal, and we got to move forward. The Secret Service is supposed to be the premier protection agency in the world, and they were anything but that. They got outsmarted and outmaneuvered by a 20-year-old who had 10 days' notice. He was the one flying drones, not the Secret Service. He was the one that scouted the location before he shot the president, not the Secret Service. And what they should have done is they should have had drones. They should have had people on that roof. They should have had anti-drone technology. They should have covered it with the water tower as well. They didn't do any of those things, and it cost Corey Comparatori his life and almost cost Donald Trump his as well.
You know, Congressman, we don't get to be in that room. You do. But there's so many Americans who want the Secret Service to be truthful, transparent, and honest about what happened. You are our voices. Hopefully you will do that work relentlessly tomorrow, hold their feet to the fire, and get that information to all of us who deserve to know what happened on that horrific day, July 13th. Pat, Fallon, Congressman, thank you for being with us. We appreciate it.
John, you got it. God bless. Take
God
care.
bless.
God bless.